The Earth Shakers, a collision of horn and ivory. The sun hung low over the horizon, a pale, heatless disk that offered no comfort to the frozen world below. This was the Mammoth Steppe, a vast, dry grassland that stretched across the top of the world, locking the northern hemisphere in an icy grip. It was a land of extremes, where the wind flayed the skin and the ground was hard as iron. In this unforgiving landscape, survival was a daily calculation of calories burned versus calories gained. A massive shape dominated the skyline. It was the woolly giant, a creature of immense proportions. Standing over 11 feet tall at the shoulder, he was a dark mountain against the white snow. His breath plumed in the frigid air like smoke from a chimney. He was ancient, his long, shaggy coat matted with the dust of 1,000 miles. His tusks were magnificent, spiraling out and curving inward, great sweeps of ivory that he used as snowplows. He was currently engaged in the serious business of eating. He had found a windswept ridge where the snow was thin, allowing him to use his tusks to scrape down to the dry, nutrient-poor grass beneath. The silence of the steppe was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic crunch of the massive herbivore tearing grass and the low rumble of his digestion. But the solitude was about to be broken. From the valley floor below, another beast was trudging up the slope. It was lower to the ground, stockier, and built like a siege engine. This was the woolly rhinoceros. If the mammoth was a fortress, the rhino was a battering ram. He weighed nearly 3 tons, a dense package of muscle and aggression. His most defining feature was the horn on his nose. Unlike modern rhinos, whose horns are often conical, this creature's horn was flattened from side to side, blade-like, and nearly 4 feet long. It was a tool for sweeping snow, but it was also a weapon of devastating potential. The rhino had poor eyesight. His world was painted in blurry shapes and shadows. However, his sense of smell was acute, and right now, his nostrils were flaring. He smelled another herbivore. He smelled competition. Rhinoceroses of the Pleistocene were notoriously ill-tempered. Unlike the mammoth, who might tolerate other species if they kept their distance, the rhino was territorial and reactive. He had been grazing in the valley, but the snow was too deep. The scent of exposed grass on the ridge and the scent of the intruder triggered a surge of testosterone and aggression. The woolly giant stopped chewing. He felt the tremors in the ground before he saw the source. He turned his massive head, his small eyes focusing on the dark shape cresting the ridge. He knew this creature. They were neighbors in this frozen hell, but they were rarely friends. The mammoth rumbled a low warning, a subsonic vibration that could be felt in the chest. It was a signal. I am here. Go away. The woolly rhinoceros did not go away. Instead, he lowered his head. The movement was mechanical, distinct. It presented the flat, blade-like horn as a spear point. He huffed, a sharp exhalation of steam, and scraped his hooves against the permafrost. The rhino did not calculate the size difference. He did not care that the mammoth outweighed him 2-to-1. He only knew that this was his ridge, and the mountain in front of him needed to move. The woolly giant turned fully to face the threat. He spread his ears, making himself look even larger, though that hardly seemed possible. He waved his trunk, trumpeting a high-pitched blast that echoed off the distant glaciers. It was a final warning. The rhino charged. It was not a slow buildup. It was an explosive release of kinetic energy. The 3-ton beast accelerated with terrifying speed, his legs churning up the snow, his head held low. He was a missile aimed directly at the mammoth's legs. The mammoth had seconds to react. He could not dodge. He was too heavy, and the footing was too treacherous. He had to absorb the blow. He braced his front legs, locking his massive joints, and lowered his tusks to intercept the charge. The collision sounded like a falling tree. The rhino's horn slammed into the base of the mammoth's tusks. The impact stopped the rhino dead in his tracks, sending a shockwave through his body that compressed his spine. For the mammoth, the blow was staggering. He was shoved backward, his massive feet skidding through the gravel and ice. If the rhino had hit his leg, the bone would have shattered, condemning the giant to a slow death. But the tusks held. For a moment, they were locked in a stalemate, a tableau of prehistoric power. The rhino pushed upward, his massive neck muscles straining to drive the horn under the mammoth's guard and into the soft underbelly. The mammoth pushed downward, using his 6 tons of gravity to crush the attacker. The rhino bellowed, a guttural, wet sound, and thrashed his head side to side. The blade-like horn raked against the mammoth's trunk, drawing a line of bright red blood. The pain flared hot and sharp. Enraged, the woolly giant abandoned defense. He used his superior height to his advantage. He lifted his front leg slightly and slammed his weight down. His curved tusk hooked around the rhino's shoulder, acting like a giant shepherd's crook. With a twist of his neck that required immense power, the mammoth shoved the rhino sideways. The rhino, built for forward momentum, but possessing a high center of gravity, lost his footing on the slick ice. He stumbled, his legs splaying out. The mammoth did not wait. He stepped forward, pressing his advantage. He didn't use his tusks to gore. He used his forehead. He slammed his skull against the rhino's flank. It was a bludgeoning blow, a shove backed by the weight of a heavy truck. The woolly rhinoceros wheezed as the air was driven from his lungs. He scrambled for traction, his hooves sparking against hidden rocks. The aggression that had fueled his charge was evaporating, replaced by the cold reality of physics. Mass wins. He was being bullied, shoved, and crushed by a creature that he could not overpower. The mammoth trumpeted again, this time a sound of dominance, not warning. He loomed over the stumbling rhino, his trunk raised like a club, ready to strike. The rhino regained his footing, but he did not charge again. He backed away, shaking his head, dazed. The fire in his blood had cooled. The ridge was not worth dying for. He snorted, a sound of frustration, and turned away, keeping a wary eye on the giant. He began the slow, humiliating trot back down the slope, toward the deep snow and the difficult grazing of the valley. The mammoth watched him go. He did not pursue. He was not a predator. He had no desire to kill. He simply wanted to eat. He waited until the rhino was a distant speck before he relaxed. The adrenaline faded, leaving the cold to seep back in. The cut on his trunk stung, but the freezing air would soon clot the blood. He turned back to the patch of exposed grass. The wind picked up, screaming across the steppe once more, erasing the signs of the struggle. The giant lowered his head, wrapped his trunk around a tuft of dry grass, and pulled. The rhythmic crunch of feeding returned, the only sound in a world of ice. The king of the steppe had held his ground.